So you're driving along on the street, going about your business, and of course, the police officer stop you, or a police officer stop you. Whether you feel like you committed an infraction or not, that's not the real issue. The reason a police officer pull you over, the reason that they can pull you over are myriad. It's a lot. Wherever you are, the Road Traffic Act gives police pretty much expansive reasons to stop you. And so, because we don't sometimes realize what we may have done, that sort of thing, it's imperative that you obey their commands if they tell you to stop. Now, if you feel like the reason that the officer stops you is wrong or unconstitutional or whatever, there's a place to address those concerns. It's a court of law. So generally, when you're stopped by a police officer when you're driving, they require that you give them your driver's license, your proof of insurance, and your registration for the automobile you're driving. That's the law. It's pretty much a law everywhere, right? So the law does not say you may give it to the police officers. The law says you must give it to the police officers. But now I see people refusing to hand over their driver's license. Now for me, as you can see, I'm doing this video and I'm driving to work. So right here above my visor are my proof of insurance and my registration certificate. They're right there. So if a police officer stops me, whether it's night or day, it's easy. I flip on my light right here, pull them out, hand them to him. No argument, no fuss, no fight. It's just handing over your documents, which you're supposed to hand over. You're driving, and first of all, driving is really not a privilege under the law. It's not a right under the law, it's a privilege. That's why you have to get a license to do it. Now, we need to understand these things, and I speak now to my Jamaican counterparts. You must hand over the documents. And usually when you do that, if the police officer, who is the first judge of events, the first judge of the situation, feel like you're being cooperative, the law grants the police officer the authority to give you a warning and not necessarily a ticket. But let me ask you this. If you become belligerent while a police officer stops you, and you start to yell, you start to scream, you start to heap abuse on him, what do you think he's going to do? And when you refuse to hand over your license and he orders you out of the vehicle, which he's empowered to do, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to fight him, you're going to refuse to obey his commands, and you're going to beat him up, and then you're just going to walk away free. No. So in a country of laws, that could get you killed. And I tell you, most of you Jamaicans I see doing these things are doing it because the country's legislature is a bunch of cowards. It's filled with a bunch of cowards and a bunch of complicit people who are not fit to be legislators. You have people in our legislature pontificating, doing things that they know they shouldn't do, dressing in ways they shouldn't dress in our parliament, cursing each other out, and carrying on like it's a fish market. That's not what the parliament was intended for. The parliament was intended to be a place of decorum where people pass laws. That's it. But one of the things that I noticed with my fellow Jamaicans, and this has been from I was a little boy, it was almost something when somebody fights a police officer, he was seen as some kind of a hero. Never understood it. And police were classified as boys. Never understood that either. For some reason, dignified police officers are characterized as police boys. Now, being that as it may, I joined the Jamaica Constabulary Force and served a full 10 years with distinction before I walked away. But I tell you one thing, when I was serving, some of you alive now may remember when I was serving, I didn't tolerate none of that nonsense. You weren't going to fight me. If you fight me, it wasn't going to end well for you. And I know that because the laws were not necessarily there, the laws were there, but the penalties were not enough. And so when somebody is actually charged with resisting arrest or assaulting a police officer, the penalty was not severe enough. And in most cases, what the judges would do, they would admonish and discharge that charge, which means you're convicted of it, but there was no penalty. So they would admonish you and discharge it for fighting the police. Now let me ask you a question. What other category of worker have a responsibility to go to work, get beat up on the job physically, and go home battered and bruised, and there's no consequence? Now I ask you this question. Why would I, a police officer empowered to do my job, allow you to put your hand on me, cause me any kind of pain or any kind of hurt, and you walk away scot-free? Because I know you're not going to suffer any penalty in court because the parliament hasn't stiffened the laws for these kinds of assaults on police officers. What do you think would happen if you put your hand on me? I'm going to tell you one thing. I generally never carried a baton. We never had tasers. So I have a gun. I'm not going to fight with you because I'm not a boxer. So if you put your hand on me, understand what is going to happen. Now, realistically, all that needs to be done is for the legislature to change the laws and make it a felony for aggravated assault on police officers that carries a mandatory minimum of 5 years. Mandatory minimum of 5 years. Resisting arrest, same thing. That would cut back a lot of the issues that we see playing out on the Jamaican streets, where police officers in the legal and lawful execution of their duties are faced with these kinds of scenarios every single day in executing the government's own mandate to clean up the streets of the chaos, especially as it relates to taxi drivers. This has to stop. But you don't stop it by giving the police a ticket book to write the tickets, to collect the revenue, and then you walk away from it by not protecting the police officers. This is untenable. And so if the police officers act now based on how the law is configured, it's going to be seen as the police using force in a situation where it was a ticketable offense, and it's not fair to the police officers. That has to stop. It has to stop. So I hope somebody in the legislature who intends to do their job will sit down instead of running around doing their private business. Sit down, write a piece of legislation, and bring it to the floor of the House so that it can be debated. 5 years minimum. 5 years minimum for assault on police officers. And you can't tell me that you are working to clean up the country, Mr. Prime Minister, if you don't push for that legislation to be passed through the House to become law. You must protect the protectors. You must protect the protectors. A police officer cannot get up, put on his uniform, and go out there to be assaulted, and there's no consequence for it. People, and the worst part of it are those people who have no business in what's going on, who inject themselves into the situation. The actions of the police officers are writing a ticket, the police officers are attempting to arrest an offender, and they inject themselves into the matter. And what does that create? Mayhem and chaos, to the point where they're literally pulling at the police officers' uniforms, pulling at their hands in an effort to free the person being arrested, and they have no idea why this person is being arrested. They have no skin in the game. They have no skin in the game. But they inject themselves into the matter, and now it becomes pandemonium. How can we have a situation where police officers are effectuating an arrest and people, citizens, bystanders, inject themselves into the situation, pulling at the police officer's uniform and trying to free the person being arrested? In what country is that tolerated? And yet still we have 63 members in the House of Parliament. 63 morons who don't see that there's something wrong with this. 63 of you sit there and none of you table a piece of legislation to say this gotta stop. None of you. Because all you care about is getting votes, and you do not want to offend these lawless people on the streets. When did Jamaica become this? Well, Jamaica did not become this overnight. Jamaica has been that for a long time. Very long time. But it has to stop. And so my advice to the police officers, don't let them put their hands on you. In the absence of legislation, use your baton, use your pepper spray, and whatever hell else you have to use it to protect your life until they see fit to stop this legislatively. I'll talk to you another time.